Now, this all started in the summer of 2015, back when I worked at the Walmart of my town pushing carts. I'm not exactly sure the exact date it all started, although I do recall it was around the 4th of July. It all started with a simple call over my radio with a request to help someone load their items into their car. Glad to get out of the hot summer heat if only for a few moments, I responded quickly saying I'd be right there and hurried in. I walked over to the register where the customer had requested assistance. The customer was a heavy-set middle-aged man who had purchased a 52-inch flat screen. I greeted the man with a warm hello and smile, which he returned. The man stood about 6'8" and spoke with a deep southern accent. He offered his hand for me to shake, which I did before he led me to his van. On the way to his car, he made small talk with me, asking me how my day was, how old I was, if I liked my job. I answered all his questions honestly, saying that my day was going fine so far, that I was 19 and I could have a worse job than this. We got to his van and worked together to load his TV into the back. Before parting ways, he asked me where I lived and if I lived alone. Now, this wasn't unusual, as a few other customers had asked me this before in the past. I simply said no. I stayed with my grandparents, having been too poor to afford to live by myself at the time and lived a mile or two out of town. I took the man's cart, wished him a good day, and walked off. It was a few days after that I realized, whenever I worked, that gray van would be in the parking lot. I didn't think too much of this, as it wasn't unusual for people to shop at Walmart every single day, so I would just go about my work. That was until a week afterwards when, after noticing the same gray van, I turned to a fellow cart pusher named Joe and said, "That gray van is always here." Joe nodded in agreement. "Yeah, I know, dude. I've only ever seen that van here when you're working." Confused, I asked what he meant. He responded with, "I've only ever seen that van here during your shifts. It leaves shortly after you do when you clock out." I found that to be a little strange, but blew it off as coincidence. Then one day, I noticed the gray van would follow me everywhere I went. I don't own a car, so I walk everywhere I go. I don't really mind as I enjoy walking. Again, I would just chalk the van always following me as a coincidence. Pretty sure the van was just heading in the same direction. Although I always found it odd that van never drove past me as I walked, but always hung back, not caring if it was holding up traffic. Red flags didn't start going off until I spotted that gray van trailing me on a Wednesday night as I was walking back home from my youth group meeting at church. At first I just brushed it off as usual until it followed me out of town. Normally it would turn away when I left city limits, but this time it continued to follow me. I started to feel as though something wasn't right about this and began to wish I had my pocket knife on me, just in case. The van followed me till I walked into my driveway before driving off. I had gotten the chills at this point and made sure to lock the doors when I entered my house. That next night, I was walking home in the dark again after a man's group Bible study. The memory of last night was burned in my mind, and I had decided if the van followed me to my house again, I would notify the police in the morning. Sure enough, it ended up trailing me again. I gritted my teeth, sick of whoever this person was. However, the van pulled a few feet ahead of me and stopped. The driver's side door opened and the customer who I had helped with the TV stepped out and approached me. He greeted me like everything was normal and asked me where I was headed. I told him I was headed home, making a mental note to tell the police about this guy first thing in the morning. The man continued to act friendly and offered me a ride home, stating it was too dark for me to walk home and weirdos might try something. I declined, saying I didn't live that far away, but he kept insisting it was too dangerous and I should ride with him. The more I said no, the more and more he kept pushing for me to get in his van. It was at this point I decided I was done and started to walk past this guy when he put his hand on my arm and started pulling me to his van, stating that he was giving me a ride whether I liked it or not. Being a 19-year-old young man, I had always thought I would be able to easily handle a situation like this. However, panic had taken over my body. My mind raced of a way to get away from this guy. Pretty sure wherever this guy wanted to take me, it sure wasn't my house. Now, I don't know if it was a miracle or just plain luck, but at that moment, a police car drove by and pulled into the nearby gas station to fill up. The man let go of my arm, wished me good night, got into his van, and sped off. I decided to talk with the cop while he was getting gas, telling him about the past events. The cop ended up driving me home, telling me if I saw the guy again to immediately call the police. It's been months now, and I haven't seen that guy again. I eventually quit my job and moved to another state starting college. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened to me if that cop hadn't drove by that night. So whoever you are, owner of that gray van, let's not meet again. When I was in elementary school, my family lived on a dead-end street in a safe neighborhood. We never thought anything of walking up or down the street to visit a friend. This particular day, I had a friend over and we decided to walk down the street to my friend Leah's house. As we left the house, there was an older man walking down the road in the opposite direction we were walking. I had never seen him before, which was unusual but not unheard of. Sometimes people from other streets would walk down ours for exercise or whatever. As he passed us, he smiled and said, "Hi, girls." And being a friendly kid, I smiled and said, "Hi," back. His smile immediately dropped from his face and he bent over very close to my face and snarled, "Didn't your mother ever teach you not to talk to strangers?" I got scared and teared up. I walked around him very fast. Shelby and I particularly ran the rest of the way to Leah's. She had a very long driveway, so we rushed down the driveway and started pounding on the door, while looking behind us to see if the man was around. He followed us instead of continuing to walk in the direction he had originally been walking. No one answered the door at Leah's, so we knew we had to walk back to my house. We very slowly walked down the driveway, hoping he'd have passed it by the time we got to the end. But he stood there waiting for us. I was far more scared than Shelby was. She walked a bit ahead of me. When we got to the end of the driveway, we had to pass him to get by. Shelby said something along the lines of, "Leave us alone," but we were 7-year-old girls, so we weren't exactly intimidating. He responded by saying, "My name is Raymond. I just want to be your friend. My best friend died, and I miss him so much." Then he grabbed his belt buckle and said, "Look, here's a picture of my friend." The belt buckle was metal, with a carved-out bumblebee that had a human head. It really scared me, so we took off running. We cut through another neighbor's yard and ran all the way back to my house and told my mom everything. She went outside to look, but he was gone. I saw him 2 more times, hiding behind trees while I was walking home from the school bus, which dropped me off at the bottom of the road. We moved a few months later. I still vividly remember all of it. and it still scares me just thinking about it. This happened just this weekend, and I realized it was the first time I've ever felt creeped out by a situation or a person. With that being said, some friends and I were sitting around at a cafe drinking coffee. Around 9 p.m., we decided we were bored and wanted to do something different besides loitering behind the cafe smoking an unhealthy amount of cigarettes. We thought it would be a great idea to walk around a cemetery. So we did just that, but we found it to be just as boring as sitting behind the cafe. It wasn't as spooky as we had hoped. One of my friends mentions a forest near where we live that is known to be haunted, so we decided to go. Ironically, of course, we really weren't in the mindset to deal with what we experienced, so we headed out in separate cars and regrouped in a parking lot in the small town that the forest is located in, and proceeded in a single car. We drive down this dark, winding road guided only by my friend's memory, and we never really found the place we were looking for. We feel disappointed for driving a good half hour to get there and not really getting to experience a haunted forest. We decided to stop at a nature reserve that was listed online, so we at least got something out of the trip. As it is about 10:30 p.m. at this point, the ramp down to the parking lot is closed, so we park in front of the gate and just walk around it. We head down the ramp and comment on how many stars we can see. Once we get to the bottom, there is a dirt parking lot and an information building that is closed. The only light coming from the building is a deep red light. Why would they use red light bulbs is beyond me, but it kind of put us in a weird state of mind. We could hear running water, but we didn't dare venture down the trail to check it out. We walked up to the building and checked it out. Nothing too interesting. We walked around it and nothing interesting again. At that point, we decided to leave. As we were walking away, we hear rustling coming from the bushes, so we turn around and it stops. This really reaffirms our decision to leave and we start walking again. Then the rustling starts again and we turn around. That's when we notice a beam of light shining on the ground from the bushes. It's a flashlight. That's when a man steps out of the bushes and directs the flashlight at us. He appears to be moving it back and forth, looking us over. The interaction goes as follows. "Holy shit, man, you really scared us." The man doesn't say anything for what seemed to be an unusual amount of time. "What are you kids doing down here?" "We're just looking around." The man doesn't speak for again what seemed to be an unusual amount of time, constantly keeping the light in our eyes. "Well, we're just... this area is closed." That's when the man starts slowly approaching us. I'm really too creeped out to speak at this point, so my friend begins to speak up. "Hey man, don't come any closer." The stranger stops. "I'm a police officer." From what I could see myself, the man didn't seem to be wearing a uniform of any kind, not even a ranger uniform. He seemed to be wearing jeans and a long-sleeve shirt. "Where's your car?" "It's by the gate." That's when I knew something was wrong. There was no car by the gate, let alone a police cruiser. The man also came from the bushes on the opposite side of where the gate was. I mouthed at my friends the word, "Run!" and we did just that. We booked it up the ramp and jumped in the car and locked it. We immediately started the car and reversed and peeled out onto the road. Just after getting back onto the road, we passed an old, beat-up car sitting perpendicular to the road. Immediately the car's lights turned on. It pulled out onto the road behind us. It would get really close and then pull away and flash its lights. It was honking like crazy. We went faster and faster, but it kept up the whole time. Once the small town came into sight, the car just stopped completely right in the middle of the road. We watched as it got smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. I'm still really unsure what happened. Maybe it was a person trying to scare us, but I'm not sure if I really want to know what he was up to if that wasn't his intention. This happened to me when I was in high school. I was in 10th grade on the second floor of my school in my English class. As this lecture was going on, I was becoming more and more bored listening to this monotone teacher talk. I decided to take a trip to the bathroom just so the time could go by faster. I must note that I really didn't have to go to the bathroom. It was just something I did so the time would go by faster. Like most kids that do this trick, I would usually spend about 15 minutes walking around the school and running into some friends, enjoying skipping a half hour of our boring classes. However, karma would soon catch up to me in a way I couldn't believe. As I was walking back to my class, I hear my history teacher call my name, but it was odd because it wasn't like he was calling my name telling me to come back to class. It was more like he was calling my name to ask me a question in class, which I thought was odd because obviously I'm not in class. When I finally reached the door and briefly looked into the classroom, what I saw will forever scare me for the rest of my life. It was me, but not only was it me, but it was wearing the same clothes as I was. A green hoodie, blue Levi jeans, and a distinguishable birthmark on my right forearm. I pinned myself against the wall, trying to question what I just saw. I kept checking over and over, trying to see if my eyes were playing tricks on me. It felt like a video game, only I had no control. Every time the teacher said John and this other thing answered, I felt sick. I wanted to throw up. While sitting there, pondering my own sanity, I heard John ask to go to the bathroom. I picked myself up and thought to myself, maybe I could try and talk to this person or thing. As I saw him walking out of the classroom, I started walking behind him, trying to keep up with him. I yelled out, "Hey!" He turned around to face me, smirked, and took off down the hallway. I chased him down, grabbing him by the stairs, pushing him against the wall, but as soon as my eyes met his, we started glitching out like a computer glitch. And in the blink of an eye, I was back in my classroom, listening to my teacher re-say the same words in his lecture before I asked to go to the bathroom. I was as white as a ghost sitting there, wondering if what I experienced actually happened. The rest of the day went on as normal, except I couldn't get what happened out of my head. Anybody could say that I daydreamed or fell asleep in class, except it felt so real. I do hope that this never happens again. Hey guys, thank you all for watching, and if you like this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. I want to apologize if my voice sounds a little messed up in some of those recordings. I am coming down with a cold, unfortunately. Well, let's hope I don't come down with a cold. But, as I've said before in my last video, I'm going to be doing a subscriber-submitted story video next week, providing if this cold doesn't take effect. Hopefully it won't. Even so, though, guys, submit to me any stories that you have just so I can gather more up. You guys have sent me a ton of really great stories, and I really appreciate that. But if I do get a little bit sick, it might deter the subscriber-submitted story video. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't feel like I'm getting a cold, but it sure damn well feels like it. So again, I apologize if my voice is a little screwed up in some of the recordings. But as always, guys, thank you all for watching, and just remember, The best ideas always come out of nightmares.